Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's 100% Metroid Fusion. In the last part, we learned the truth that there was actually a Metroid breeding program going on here in the station, and then we took out Neo Ridley, and now we're technically at endgame. What you can do right now is once we exit this little Torian area, we'll be in Sector 1, at which point you can go to the navigation room and start the final set of events in the game. However, this is also the opportunity we have to go collect everything, because now we're back in that one room I told you to remember back in Sector 1. And thus we can access the other sectors through the little inter-sector passageways that I showed you earlier to get every item in the game. Was that a Metroid shell? That was a Metroid shell. That's not good. The thing is, though, is that you have to use the inter-sector passageways, because otherwise, if you enter a navigation room at all, you are locked into the final events at this point. So before you go to any navigation room, make sure you have all the items in the game. We're getting most of them this part, so this is entirely cleanup. If you're only here to beat the storyline, skip until next part, because we're only doing cleanup here. And even then, there's still one item I missed, and that's the one I mentioned before, that I technically didn't have on my checklist in Sector 2. But we'll get that next part, don't worry. And a lot of these items are actually going to involve Shine Spark puzzles. There's a lot of Shine Sparking in this game for some reason. In terms of the total amount of items you're going to want to have by the end of the game before you know that you have 100% otherwise, you're going to want to have 20 energy tanks, which is all the energy tanks, 250 missiles, which is all the missiles, and 72 power bombs. There's one more power bomb after that, but that's on the main deck, so we need to access the final chain of events to actually even get to that thing. So, those are your goals here. In terms of the item I'm working on right now, you might remember the room where we got the charge beam earlier on. There is actually an energy tank located there that we need the Shine Spark in order to get to. We need the space jump over here, Shine Spark into the room so that we hit that incline. And this is me trying to remember exactly where I have to Shine Spark up, but it's in that thing two above me. You just basically need to be in where the elephant bird was and Shine Spark up. Admittedly, this is also the part of the game I'm not too fond of, because if you're going for 100%, you would basically be done with the game by the end of the part. But since I am going for 100%, I had to go back through all 6 sectors to get items I couldn't get earlier, for whatever reason. And this can take a while. I think Zero Mission has you go more out of the way than this game does, but in this game's case, it's still pretty bad. You'll also see a few cases, or numerous cases actually, especially in sectors 3 and 2, I believe, where there are cases that I really could have saved getting items until this cleanup session. Because you really can save a lot of items for later. Like, it's just because I had that kind of self-imposed rule where I wanted to get every item as early as I possibly could, with the exception of that one that wasn't on my checklist. You'll also see me make a couple of dumbass moves in this, just because this is the part of the game I practiced the least. I practiced the main storyline a decent chunk, but the cleanup I practiced basically once just to find out where everything was again. That's basically it. Like right here, I could have gotten the missile tank that was in here later on, like right now, but I didn't. And also, you're going to see me make another dumbass move here. I'm going to head in this room to show you something, but my next destination is actually the main room right after this recharge room, and that's another Metroid shell. So there's Metroids evolving, and whatever it is, since we've seen at least 2 Metroid shells, it is at least in the Gamma phase, which is not good. Anyway, back to what I was saying. I am now going the wrong way around, because my goal, like I said, is the room right after the recharge room. That hall, that shaft I was in with the Metroid shell there led to that room anyway. I was thinking ahead a bit and just did the wrong move. So there's like an extra minute of gameplay here that's not needed. I will also be doing some actual jump cuts in this part, because with the minimal amount of editing, oh, well, there's 3, great, so whatever it is, it's in Zeta form, crap. Because in this part, you've seen most of the rooms we're going to be in already, so I'm going to be jump cutting around every now and then, because with just my pauses to check my checklist aside, edited out, this was about 30 minutes, and no, so I'm actually going to be jump cutting out some actual stuff later on in the part. What you could potentially do is Well, actually, first off, I should mention in the top right of this room is a morph ball tunnel that leads to a intersector tunnel. And I start to enter that, but I immediately do a fade transition to me going back the opposite direction. And that's because I was checking to see where in Sector 2 that was, and it was nowhere I needed to be yet. So, this is just a useless one. Anyway, back to what I was saying. When you load up the game after beating the game, hopefully you'll be at the save point right before you start the endgame events, first off. And when you check the pause menu, there will be a checklist. 2, technically 3 kinds. Overall game, which shows overall missile tanks, power bombs, and energy tanks. And then I think you have to press a button or just go phase to it automatically. It'll show the amounts for the area you're in. And when you complete an area's items, above and to the right of that, it'll show a energy tank, a power bomb, or a missile tank with a check mark over it, meaning you've gotten all those items in that area. So, technically speaking, it is actually easier to complete this game after you've already beaten it, because then you'll have a checklist for it. Also, coming up on another instance, you might remember that energy tank and missile tank I got to the left of me in this next room, and my first visit to Sector 3, I could have gotten this now, and I would have been completely fine. Because then I wouldn't have had to go out of my way to get these earlier. It's a minor time save, I mentioned it before, but in a game where the best ending image is 100% in under 2 hours, or 2 hours or under, I think technically, you need every second you can really get. Mind you, I'm still not entirely sure about what this game counts as the timer. I know it doesn't count pauses. I don't think it counts room transitions, conversations with Adam, and item get messages. I think it just counts whenever you have control, basically. Which, you know, cool of them to do that, but you still need to keep that in mind. But yeah, that's most of the things with the cleanup out of the way. For the most part, we're just going to be venturing around. Like I said before, this is the closest to filler you're going to see with a Metroid game, is just complete cleanup. And I mentioned it before, I'll mention it again, I think the Game Boy Advance Metroids are honestly the worst with item cleanup, because there's no real convenient way to do it, unless you did the thing I kind of did in this playthrough, where I went after everything my first opportunity, because in that instance, you tend to get enough done along the way that it's mostly worth it, but you're going to go out of your way for stuff to get 100% no matter what. Zero Mission I find to be worse with it because of how that game handles endgame, but we'll get to that soon enough, trust me. Also, we're back in this room, so I could have gotten the energy tank and missile tank in here a bit later. But almost every other Metroid off the top of my head, like the original 2, Return to Samus, Return to Samus, Super, Prime 1 and 3, not so much Prime 2, and Other M, you can get most of the stuff as you play the storyline. Other M at least has kind of a similar thing to this game, where you can go back after you beat the game, but that also has some story significance, so I'm not going to count that as... I don't count that game as over until you see the final percentage, basically. And I have not played Prime Hunters in the damn longest time, so I have not remember how that game works with that stuff. Mind you, I think that's the one Metroid game I've never 100%ed, because I always seem to miss something on the scan log. Not that it's something I play often, it's honestly probably the worst Metroid game out there, objectively speaking, although I still probably would play it over Prime 2 again. But that's also just because I can at least have some amount of fun with Prime Hunters, whereas Prime 2 bores the hell out of me. Thinking about it, though, I can't tell which game I fault more for having you go so far out of the way to get completion. This or Zero Mission, because this was the first game to do it, plus it has the whole sector thing causing the whole told where to go but not how to get there thing, meaning that because of that, you're going to have a lot of more out-of-the-way areas. However, in the case of Zero Mission, even though it came out later, that game's endgame has it that you're so far out of the way to begin with that to get 100% you're going out of the way just because of that. So I can't tell what I felt more for that. Mind you, in both instances, we're going to be talking over a good amount of cleanup. So, in this case, 20 minutes of it. So I apologize in both cases if I end up speaking about stuff that is current for me but dated for you, like to get perspective on when this is being recorded. The Nintendo Switch came out almost 2 weeks ago. So that should show you not only how far I am in terms of video stock, but also just that I cannot really talk about stuff easily because things that are like issues in games might be fixed or over by the time that this gets uploaded. And games that I talk about looking forward to might have been released and came out kind of meh, like in the case of Mighty Number 9. You know, I didn't find that game to be too horrible, just kind of disappointing, which is honestly one of the worst things a game could be. Either way, back on topic. The tricky thing as well about doing this cleanup, in this game's case at least, is trying to map out the most convenient way to go through the sectors. With my playthroughs, I tend to save Sector 2 for last, just because that has one of the shortest climbs back up to the main deck. And that's what happens here, but you're going to see some stuff. And here I am, technically going backwards a bit, because you might remember, we've seen this upcoming passageway twice now. We're back here, but now I can go through here. You know, I really do like this inter-area tunnel concept. I wish more games in the Metroidvania kind of genre did this. Except in the case of where they use warp rooms where the story can permit it, like in Castlevania. Or I think Axiom Verge had that, didn't it? I forget. Because while I like the concept of walking back and forth and backtracking, having little things like that that you can access past certain points just makes it a lot easier on yourself. It kind of reminds me a bit, for very reaching reason here, by the way, a bit of the owl statues from Majora's Mask, because that allows you to quick travel everywhere much more easily. Also, yeah, there was nothing for me to get in Sector 5. And now we're back in Sector 6. Sector 6 is actually one of the more annoying areas because you can potentially screw yourself over here, actually. Because you might remember the little tunnel we went to in between the secret laboratory and where I fought the box robot the second time? There was an area in that tunnel, a power bomb expansion in specific, that you need to use a very specific shine spark to get. And the annoying thing about that is, if you screw up that shine spark, you're put right back up towards where the navigation room after the hidden laboratory was, meaning that you're now locked into post-game, into endgame events, I believe. So you need to be careful about that. Shoulder tackle. Oh yeah, that's actually something I completely forgot to mention at this point, because I've obviously, in terms of the Metroid series, the game I've done most recently compared to the original playthroughs of this is Super. They changed the Shine Spark, so now that the Shine Spark doesn't do damage to you when you use it. I never got why it took... I can speak very well. I never got why it did damage to you in the first place, but oh well. This game also really likes having Shine Spark puzzles. I don't get why. Mind you, Zero Mission did too, now I think about it. But I can understand Zero Mission because they're trying to use the later game abilities to their advantage in that one. Though, you know what I'm surprised is an item that they didn't bring back in any other 2D Metroid games after it debuted, even though it came back in the Prime series? I'm surprised they never brought the Spider Ball back. I mean, sure, that kind of limits your level design access, because now you just basically gave players the way to go everywhere in the room, but if they used that right, like it could only go up certain surfaces like it does in the Prime series, that could have been cool. Also, this is me forgetting how to do this one puzzle, because as I said before, this is the part of the game I have practiced the least, purely because I just haven't practiced it nearly as much. But that's what you kind of have to do in a game like this. There are some parts you're just not going to be able to practice as much. Oh boy, oh, that was close. Also, if you haven't noticed it, you're hearing this song the entire time you're doing this, so I hope you like this song. I like it because it's just really cool sounding, but you might not like it. And I think now I'm out of things to talk about with this. Great. Let's see what I can think about to talk about. Games that came out recently that people were excited for, but will be completely outdated by the time this gets uploaded. Nier Automata came out, I think yesterday or something, maybe today. Looking forward to playing that myself, because I heard it was better than the first one, and I just did not like the first Nier that much. Zelda Breath of the Wild came out, waiting until I can get a Switch to play that. Horizon Zero Dawn came out, and that looks interesting. Okay, here's the really annoying Shine Spark. You have to hit that block there in the top left, because that top left block is a crumble block. You need to then jump through the speed booster blocks so that you can get on top of them. This is very annoying, and if you screw it up, you're going all the way up back towards where the secret laboratory was. And if you get stuck there, you're screwed into post-game. So I need to get that and then fall back on top of the block. Some routes I've seen get this item last because of that, and it's very viable to do that, but I'm doing my own thing here, obviously. Not really fond of that gameplay choice, thinking about it, where you're locked into endgame events if you go to a navigation room. The way I would have done that is make it so that you can have free access to the sectors, but the moment you go up the main deck elevator, you'd be locked in. That's the way I would have done that. Mind you, I'm not technically viable to be criticizing games like that, because while I went into game design at first at college, I'm now in another field. However, I still took enough classes to realize some of the more idiotic stuff that games can do. And it's a tricky field being a game critic when you're not like an actual game critic or a game designer. So, yeah, that's the thing. Oh, this missile tank coming up here is really annoying. Power bomb tank, rather. Because crumble blocks, you can jump on them with yourself or the morph ball for like 2 or 3 frames. And because of that, it's really tricky to get this. I get it fairly quickly here, but I've had a playthrough where it took me like 8 minutes to get this because I was just not pressing the button at the right timing. Thankfully, there is a way back out of Sector 6, as you can now see. You just have to go this way. Also, you'll see me using the power bomb blocks a lot because, in my mind, power bomb blocks are the more common ones, even though they're really not. At this point, it's the screw attack blocks. But, oh well. I'm trying to look at my missile count, see if I can figure out how many I have at this point. So if at this point, I think I might have all but that last one I was talking about. And this is me remembering, oh, right. Speed booster. Right. Ooh, that's something I can talk about, actually. For some reason, that reminded me of this. This will be outdated. In fact, this entire series will be over by the time this gets uploaded. But the Samurai Jack revival started last night. And that was awesome. Like, really, really quality show. This is actually a very tricky room, too. We basically have a lot of those little bomb platforms you have to jump on. But there's also ones that'll block your way, because what you need to do here is do a Shine Spark to the right. And you need to place your bomb specifically in the middle of the first 2, the left and right of the third, and the middle, just to the left of the middle on the 4th in order to get this energy tank. That can be a bit specific, because if you screw up, you're going to be doing stuff. And now we're back in the first room of Sector 6, because I didn't feel like showing the rest of Sector 6. Like I said, otherwise this was a half-hour-long part. And now we're heading into Sector 4. However, the thing is, we already have everything in Sector 4. The last thing we need from over here is actually a passageway back to Sector 2, if I recall. And that passageway is in a pretty opportune location because it's right below me through some screw attack blocks. Oh, actually, this reminds me. You might remember when we got the gravity suit. I mentioned that there was a power-up that didn't work if you were in water unless you had the gravity suit. That power-up is the screw attack. Even in the manual, it states that the screw attack will not work in water unless you have the gravity suit. However, you only can ever have the gravity suit by the time you get the screw attack without doing some debug codes. So that's a bit backwards there. I have to wonder what the design decision was behind that if you can't even get it. But they probably put the screw attack in before they programmed the gravity suit, so yeah. Okay, this room sucks. Almost this entire platform in front of me is made of crumble blocks, and we need to jump over to 2 power bomb expansions on the top left and on the bottom left. This is very annoying, even though because the space jump is actually really good in this game, in that it's actually very responsive compared to, like, Metroid 2, but it still has some issues. Doesn't help that you actually have to go through it twice to get the 2 items. So I'm going to fast forward just to get us out of here a bit more quickly, because I don't like this. Also, when it sped out the music, it sounds oddly like Shantae to me. Weird. Like I mentioned before, there is one missile tank that I forgot to get. I don't get it in this cleanup either, because the way I did the checklist was, when I completed the cleanup, I would take a look at my total items and try to figure out if I missed anything, and if I did, where it was. So I didn't know I was even missing an item until I completed the cleanup, which really sucked for me, but thankfully I was in the right area for it to begin with, and it's a fairly easy to access one, even though if I recall, I outright passed by where it is. Yeah, because I go down here In case you need reminders, even though I've said it like 3 times, in the room where I got a missile tank after getting the high jump, go into the water, jump over the little platform. You might need to use a bomb if you don't have gravity suit yet, which you should by this point, I would hope. Otherwise, how the hell did you get this far? And then just go get it. I still can't believe I'm missing it, but it's just one of those things that happens. Because I've seen other playthroughs of this, live playthroughs at that, where they got 99%, and in some cases, it was even that exact missile expansion they missed. So that kind of sucks. And in terms of where I'm heading right now, actually, the last missile and power bomb expansion that I can get for right now is here in Sector 2. And it's in the top right of where we fought Zazabi, because we can actually screw attack through this wall. Into a room I actually had a lot of trouble with my first playthrough. First off, the missile is directly above me to the right. We need to use a Shine Spark to get in there. What this room is that it's a giant speed booster chain. You're constantly running up in contact that you have to Shine Spark onto just to keep your momentum. And just pressing down with good timing to keep your Shine Spark going. I had a lot of trouble with this room as a kid. Nowadays, it's really easy because I understand how this works. Plus, I'm nowhere near as fidgety with the controller. There is still one god dang it moment coming up where you actually have to jump up there for a split second. But otherwise, this is very simple. I don't know why I had trouble with that as a kid. But yeah, if you look at my missiles, you can even clearly see that I am missing one missile expansion, but I'll get that at the start of next part. Don't worry. And in a moment, I'm actually going to be jump cutting back towards the main room of this area because I need to use the recharge room to check my total mounts. And then we'll be ending off. So the cleanup is almost done. I'm actually surprised I managed to keep it on topic as I did in this. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 11, we'll be going after that last missile expansion, and then heading off towards endgame. See you guys then.